What's up, y'all? Talon here, and today I'm going to be ranking each of the Pokemon coming to Pokemon and Scarlet and Violet through the Teal Mask DLC in terms of their viability in the official competitive rule set, which is doubles Pokemon VGC. Currently, we're in a format called Regulation D, which essentially has all the native Pokemon to Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, as well as any Pokemon outside of cover legendaries that are available in the game through Pokemon Home. So this includes really strong Pokemon like Urshifu, Heatran, Cresselia, which have all been dominating competitive play. So that's going to affect the tier list pretty substantially. Most of the Pokemon, if they're not able to compete for a spot over those types of Pokemon, they're going to be ranked a bit lower than if it was a more restricted regional dex format. We don't know if Regulation E, which will be the next format for the most of the remaining year of 2023, is going to be Regulation D+, so essentially just adding these Pokemon as well as the previous rule set, where we're going to see something like a Pokemon Home restriction, which a lot of players would be pretty interested in. The Urshifu, Heatran, Cresselia meta with just lots of really overpowered legendaries hasn't been too fun for a lot of people, but we don't know that rule set, but I'm going to assume it's going to be Regulation D+, so basically all the Pokemon Home included, which is going to affect my tiering of each of these Pokemon. If you're wondering about credibility or anything like that, I have been playing for over 12 years at this point, won a couple regionals along the way, so I do think I have some knowledge of the competitive scene and what makes a Pokemon competitively viable, so I'm excited to share some of that acquired knowledge with you today. Without further ado, let's jump into it. I'm going to be starting mostly with kind of just Kanto on, so I'm going to be starting with Arbok. So Arbok, I'm going to be ranking in the D tier, so I'm going to be scrolling back and through Cerebi just for these Pokemon, but yeah, Arbok, Poison type with Intimidate, that does have some value in being able to resist things like Flutter Mane, Dazzling Gleam, and being like not an awful type, but there's also a ton of other Intimidate Pokemon that are able to resist Fairy types, so not a lot of value there. Sandslash is up next. Sandslash is like one of the only Sand Rush Pokemon in this format, but it only has a base 100 attack stat, and looking at its speed, you basically need to be going Jolly to be outspeeding things in Tailwind, and even then you're getting outsped a lot of the time. A lot of Choice Scarf Pokemon, I think you need to be running like Jolly to outspeed Choice Scarf Chi-Yu or something like that, so you're not hitting very hard. You only have ground stab that's not super good, so yeah, D tier. So just going over the tiering, S is basically going to be the greatest Pokemon, some of the best Pokemon to come out of this DLC. A is good, so these are definitely fighting for spots in a lot of team, but not meta-dominant forces. B is usable. You could use these Pokemon. They're not that strong, but they might have niches. Cheese, C tier, is basically, if you don't know what's coming, you might be able to cheese a couple battles in closed team sheet best of one, but not much beyond that. And D is just like, there's no niche for these Pokemon. They don't really have any value in a competitive format. So I place Sandslash, Alolan form, in the D tier. I think the Slush Rush ability is not too bad. Alolan Ninetales is a really good Pokemon, but it can struggle into things like Flutter Mane, just being able to snipe it with a Moonblast potentially before it's able to get Aurora Veil up. Sandslash kind of solves that. You're able to have some like steel type damage to 1-hit KO Flutter Mane. Ice type damage is pretty good. I could see Terra Blast Grass being decent into Urshifu and things like that, and then just generally being solid defensive typing. And yeah, I do think Sandslash does have like some niche, but really you're kind of just going to be trying to cheese Pokemon that would otherwise think they could beat you with a Terra Blast and take a quick knockout that way and set up your Aurora Veil and then maybe sweep from there. Next up is Clefairy. So Clefairy's main value is its ability, Friend Guard, and in past generations this was enough. Even though Clefairy has like pretty bad stats, you're able to run Assault Vest, and its high HP stat kind of compensates for the low defense stat. Its special defense stat boosted with Eviolite isn't bad, but you're definitely going bold a lot of the time on Clefairies in past formats. The one issue is now Mousehold also gets Friend Guard, which means that you really need to get utility out of Clefairy not having to tear in front of fighting types, and just generally the singular fairy typing is really the only value you have on the Clefairy. I don't really think that's so worth it. You do have some nice tools that Mousehold doesn't have in Heal Pulse, but outside of that, I'm not too impressed with Clefairy outside of some niche situations. Like I think it could have a niche with particular setup Pokemon. I'm not quite sure what those would be, but yeah, I'm going to put it in the B tier. Unfortunately for its older cousin Clefable, its evolution, I'm going to put Clefable in Cheese tier, which I think is probably kind of generous. I think it's probably closer to D. Really, Clefable has very good coverage options, so if you have need of a coverage option that something like Indeedee, which has good special attack, does not give for you, Maybe Clefable could be nice, like hitting stuff with Moonblast really hard. I really don't think it's that valuable. I think you're probably just trying to cheese people with not knowing what coverage options Clefable has. And another niche it could have is Unaware Follow Me. So if setup becomes a pretty considerable option in the metagame, which I don't think is super likely with how fast-paced it is, but you never know. Unaware Follow Me is a unique tool that it has, so I'm putting it in the C tier. Probably cheese, probably honestly the lower part of D tier. I'll try and order it somewhat in these tiers, but yeah, C tier there. All right, next I have the Ninetales. So I'm gonna start with Ninetales Fire type. I think I'll go A on Ninetales. It has some really good coverage options, or not coverage options, but support options. So among them are Fake Tears, Will-O-Wisp, Hypnosis, Encore, Helping Hand, Disable, Safeguard. These are all pretty solid. Encore Disable definitely jumps out because it has a solid speed stat. I don't think Ninetales is like holistically better than Torkoal, but at least having a lot better defensive than it. Also being able to go for an Overheat Eject Pack without taking a hit is kind of interesting. So basically, if you aren't aware, Eject Pack ejects you if your stats get lowered, so you can go for Overheat, lower your own stats, switch out, and then bring in a Sun Sweeper. I think slower Eject Pack is actually better in a lot of circumstances, but I do think the fast Will-O-Wisp is definitely the main option. Also, fast Fake Tears can be kind of cool on Ninetales. And I think there's a lot of Manual Sun going around for some of the other Pokemon introduced in this metagame, but Manual Sun, I feel like Passive Sun is just generally better, so I think Ninetales is definitely going to have a niche. Or not a niche, but it's going to be a very strong Sun setter, in my opinion, just because Sun seems like it's going to be pretty strong in this metagame. Next is Ninetales Alolan form, and kind of similar to Sandslash, we're going one tier up. I think Alolan Ninetales is probably the best returning Pokemon. Aurora Veil is very, very good. If you're not playing against a team that has its own weather, or the ability to go for prankster weather like Tornadus Rain Dance or Sunny Day, getting pretty much a free Aurora Veil just because you're such a fast Pokemon naturally. Yeah, it's 109 speed, so really quick, great special defense, pretty, the same defenses as the normal Ninetales, but you have all the same support options, but essentially you're dropping Will-O-Wisp for Aurora Veil and just way better coverage. You have Blizzard, Freeze Dry, Moonblast. These are all strong into Urshifu, a lot of flying types in the metagame, Tornadus. But yeah, I think Alolan Ninetales Aurora Veil is just such a great utility move. You're essentially getting Light Screen and Reflect Up in one turn. So yeah, I think Alolan Ninetales is probably the best returning Pokemon by far, in my opinion. Moving on, next we have Poliwrath, which I had it in D tier, but honestly, I think it's actually C tier. Very low C tier, mind you, but it's a pretty bad Swift Swim Pokemon on a lot of levels. It has decent stats, not really decent stats, but it has good defenses, and that's what's important about it. So 90, 95, 90 is incredibly solid natural bulk, but what we really want to pay attention to here is Belly Drum. So with the combination of Belly Drum and Swift Swim, your Poliwrath is able to, maybe you have something like a Follow Me Pokemon or a Rage Powder Pokemon next to Poliwrath. Once those get knocked out, you can bring in your Rain Setter along with your Belly Drum, and if they didn't lead spread damage, you essentially just have the Poliwrath ready to sweep with Rain moves or Drain Punch into other Pokemon. So I think that's actually a pretty, it's definitely cheese, but it's like viable. It's not like, there's no niche for Poliwrath. I don't think there's any other Belly Drum Swift Swim Pokemon in the metagame, so I think it has some niche, but it's pretty bad. I wouldn't recommend it. Politoed is up next. I'm going to be putting Politoed in A tier. A lot of people have said Pelipper is better, or at least I've seen that on Twitter, but I think that's really the case in hyper-offensive teams. I think Politoed not sharing a flying type weakness with things like Tornadus, Zapdos that want to be going for Hurricane or Bleak Wind Storm, Thunderous T with Wild Bolt Storm is really valuable. Also being able to have a special defense stat that's actually tenable is good, as well as just enabling something called Perish Rain, which is a very, very strong combination of Pokemon. So essentially you have Gothitelle, letting you go for Perish Songs and Trap Pokemon while also threatening an offensive Rain mode. So this is kind of similar to something like Wolfclick's old Trick Room, Perish offense team. It had Fluttermane and Palafin earlier in the format, so it's a similar idea, except now you have your water type condensed to Politoed, and then probably like an Urshifu or a Basculegion that's able to threaten crazy damage. So I do think Politoed's very good. It's definitely going to have a lot of usage, and now that Pelipper actually has like a defensive counterpart, I think we can see the rain team start to differentiate a little bit. So Victory Bell just has really low speed, decent special attack and attack. So your value as a chlorophyll Pokemon is that you have the poison type, so you're able to resist fairy damage. So that's cool, right? Unfortunately, if fairy is going up or if sun is up for your chlorophyll, you're hitting 134 max. So if you double that, that's, I believe, 268. If a Flutter Mane is a speed boosting nature, they'll outspeed you. I'm not sure if that's the case for like 190. No, it is the case because, yeah, they're hitting around above 270, 280-ish. So they're always outspeeding you. So suddenly you're not really getting a lot of value out of that poison resist. Like, it's better just to be able to move first and Sleep Powder than take a hit, which things like Lilligant can do a lot better with their higher speed stat. Yeah, I think the Lilligants outclass Victory Bell entirely as a Sun Pokemon, and there's actually new game in town in terms of grass types that are good in Sun, in terms of Ogerpon, which I'll get to closer to the end, but yeah, definitely very bad Victory Bell. Golem. So, Golem's an interesting one. It's actually the strongest user of... Oops, where is Golem 1? Well, I don't see the other Golem Pokemon, but I have them ranked in the same tier. So Golem's value is its ability to go for Explosion in the rock type form with Sturdy, and then Explosion with Galvanize, so it's an electric explosion with a 1.3 times boost. This would probably be, I'm going to put it pretty close to Cheese tier. So the Galvanized Golem has been out long enough that everyone knows as soon as it hits the field, it's an explosion bot. So you're just going to be stacking ground types, which I guess does have some counterplay. You can go for like Terra Ice or something stupid, but yeah, I don't think it's good. I don't think it's really worth it at all when, for one, Azelf has a higher attack stat than the normal Golem, and I think Snorlax is actually secretly the best self-destruct / explosion Pokemon because of the normal stab, as well as just having way better bulk and stats in general than the rest of the Pokemon. So yeah, it just doesn't seem like its niche is really even to the level of Cheese, so I'm going to be putting it in D tier. Next two Pokemon are, again, from Kanto. We have both of the Weezing forms, which are actually both going to go in the A tier. So I'm trying to remember which one I ranked. I did a little overview before this, but I do think I had the Weezing Galar a little bit higher than normal Weezing, just barely. So Neutralizing Gas prevents any Pokemon's ability from activates. Any Pokemon that are just like passively activated are neutralized. So for example, a Flash Fire Heatran can suddenly be hit by fire type moves, which is a really strong ability for a number of reasons. The cheesier reasons are you can basically enable Pokemon with horrible abilities like Slacking to suddenly become real Pokemon. I think something that's really relevant is it's one of the few counterplays to Prankster Tailwind. Being able to remove the neutralizing gas, remove Prankster's ability to go priority with the neutralizing gas is really relevant. And basically just knock out those Pokemon that would usually have carte blanche to just set up Tailwind is a really big deal. It removes weather ability, so no chlorophyll, any of that, as well as preventing Drizzle from getting set up, Grassy Surge if it's not already set up on the field. So you can you have to be a little bit more proactive with your Weezing play, but you can stop Grassy Surge from going up pretty effectively in some situations. And I think the big one is Unseen Fist. I do believe it's able to block that, so you're able to protect in front of Urshifu. Don't quote me on that, I'm not certain. But I think, yeah, it's just an absurdly overpowered ability that's going to give the Pokemon a lot of utility. Armor Tail, another one that it blocks, so your priority Pokemon, if they have priority blockers, you can have your Weezing in and just prevent that from being an effect. I think it's just a really overpowered ability, which is going to elevate these Pokemon to A tier in my opinion. The one differentiator between the two is obviously the fairy typing. So Weezing Galarian form with the top hat is able to go for Strange Steam, which is a pretty strong fairy type move, whereas the normal Weezing does not have a fairy weakness, doesn't have a steel weakness, which is pretty notable. It's able to match up into Iron Hands a little better, but isn't able to hit things like Urshifu with Strange Steam back. But you do have Will-O-Wisp, so I'm kind of not so sure which one is better. I do lean towards the resistance to fighting being a little more favored. Or sorry, not the resistance to fighting, but the ability to resist dark type moves. So dark type Urshifu, which for reasons I'll go into later, I think is going to be a little more popular this series, in short, Ogerpon. But yeah, I do think this Galarian Weezing is a little better than normal Weezing, but it's definitely going to be team dependent. So Snorlax is an interesting one because in past generations, it was almost objectively overpowered with Gluttony plus the 50% healing berries that have in this generation been nerfed to 33%, or maybe it was last generation. I think it was, but yeah. So this would enable sets like Belly Drum and Curse to have incredible longevity that it had no business having, along with Recycle, just being able to, like, you know, the name implies, recycle those berries and keep getting that healing. This Pokemon wasn't very good in the Dynamax era. It wasn't even good when we were playing kind of artificially enforced no Dynamax formats. It wasn't good then. Something called Spike Myth, as well as one of the series, Snorlax didn't have any viability then. I think people are excited for it as a Trick Room Pokemon, but something I'm going to flash up on the screen is that Ursaluna with a Swords Dance actually hits harder than a Belly Drum. I think Body Slam Snorlax, you have to run double edge to out damage it for, like, you're taking a ton of damage to do that, as well as you have to go for Belly Drum to set that up, whereas you just need a Swords Dance on Ursaluna, which is a lot more easily obtainable. I think Ursaluna just overall is a lot better of a Pokemon, better physical bulk, and although you definitely lose out on a lot of special bulk, I think Ursaluna just by far and away outclasses Snorlax in the setup realm, mainly because Snorlax has lost its ability to use Frustration in return. That was his main normal type attacking move, and I think that's one of the main detriments to Snorlax is now you have to go for Facade or Body Slam or something like a little weaker, but when you're going for when you get +6 attack, those little changes in your the base power of your move have obviously 3 times as much effect, or 4 times as much effect. Sorry, I forgot what Belly Drum does, but yeah, I'm not a fan of Snorlax this generation. What I think it does well is run a Choice Band Thick Fat set. I think that's kind of going to be slept on. It might be kind of cheesy, but I think you have a good opportunity to run a utility set with lots of good coverage moves, as well as Self-Destruct, Body Slam, the Ice Punch, Earthquake, or a cute Terra Blast like Terra Grass to be able to handle water types. But yeah, I don't think Snorlax is by any means not viable, but it's definitely not as good as it used to be. So now we're going to Johto region. Starting off strong, we have Furret. Just kidding, it's really, really bad. Let me reorder these guys. Yeah, Furret just has pretty much nothing going for it. It has so D tier for Furret. Next is Noctowl, which I think you might be expecting me to put it in the... Where are your Noctowl? No, where is he? There he is, okay. So you might be expecting D tier. I actually have it in pretty low C tier, so odds are in a couple months you're going to be seeing a video or a stream coming out from Wolfie. Every year that Noctowl's legal, he puts on a Super Bowl special and he calls it Superb Owl Sunday. So yeah, he's gonna be doing that again. If I had to guess, I think the niche here. Okay, to be clear, I don't think Noctowl is that bad. It has good HP stat, good special defense, and horrible defense, but okay, whatever. We can look past that because of two things. Number one is the ability to learn Stored Power. Okay, whatever. A lot of Pokemon can learn Stored Power with better stats than Noctowl, but I don't believe any of those have the ability Tinted Lens. So essentially what we're looking at here is a Weakness Policy Salac Berry set with Tinted Lens along with Stored Power, and I think you'd probably go most likely, you might go Moonblast. I feel like it'd be nice if it had Dazzling Gleam, but it doesn't, and then Hyper Voice. So that's definitely a lot of good coverage move. Hyper Voice into the dark types is pretty nice, and you don't have any resistances. I don't think anything 4 times resists. I mean, something does 4 times resist normal, but not a lot 4 times resist Psychic and normal. So I think Noctowl is pretty bad, but you know, you can cheese if you want to with it. So yeah. Next is Ariados. So Ariados is interesting. It has Rage Powder and Sticky Web, which is, you know, something, but beyond that, it's a very Johto Pokemon, very, very bad stats. Anyways, Ambipom up next. So Ambipom, D tier. So what Ambipom can kind of do, it's like maybe borderline cheese tier. I'll put it closer to up tier. It has Fake Out plus Last Resort, so I guess you could go Last Resort plus Terra Normal. So you Fake Out, and then next turn you only have those 2 moves in the moveset, so you're able to use Last Resort. However, this is like doing maybe like 60% HP to Iron Hands and things like that level of bulk, so you're not really getting the 1-hit KOs you want to when you're using such a weak Pokemon, and yeah, it's just not worth it. It doesn't have great support options either. It's pretty slow for a fake out Pokemon on the whole compared to some others, so yeah, we'll go D tier for Ambipom. Next is Yanmega. So Yanmega, another D tier. Essentially, the only value it has is Speed Boost Hypnosis, in my opinion. I guess it gets Tinted Lens, but it's not fast enough, and it doesn't have high enough special attack to really take advantage of that. So yeah, if you want to go for a fast Hypnosis Pokemon, use Drifblim with Unburden, Psychic Seed, or Grassy Seed instead. Not much to say there. Gliscor is it's definitely a real Pokemon in singles. It has all the spikes. It has Defog, I think. I don't know if it has Defog anymore, but it gets Knockoff back, which is pretty cool. So really good Pokemon in singles, pretty bad in doubles. It gets Hypercutter, I guess, but I think it's just largely outclassed by Landorus, or honestly like Garchomp. Anytime there's another ground type in the format, it does it better than Gliscor, just because the offensive stats aren't that good. The special defense isn't that good either. It's really a specialized defensive wall, so that's workable in singles but not so workable in double battles. Now we have Macargo, which I guess gets Shell Smash, but it's not really fast enough to take use of it. I don't even think it's stronger than like base Chi-Yu would be with Choice Spec, so yeah, not really a real Pokemon. We're gonna put it there, D tier, not even cheesing stuff with Shell Armor or Shell Smash. So next we have Mamoswine. So Mamoswine I'm gonna have in the A tier. I think it's actually quite good. Probably in the lower end of A tier. It's not going to be like a dominant threat, but I definitely think it has its niche in Oblivious Pokemon. So this means it's immune to Intimidate this generation. They updated Oblivious to be immune to that. I think it has a lot of good sets. It has pretty solid natural bulk. If you want to run a loaded dice set, you can run Icicle Spear. And what I really like, I think you could potentially go a Choice Scarf set with Icicle Crash, High Horsepower, Earthquake, and then maybe a Terra Blast or a Rock Slide. I'm not sure if that's going to be great, but I could see Terra Grass being effective into Urshifu. The water type, I honestly doubt you KO, but you might get close. With, I mean, you probably wouldn't run Chien-Pao and Mamoswine, but yeah, that's something you could run. I think Assault Vest also could be kind of decent. You're never going to stiff your nose at a Heavy Slam in a format where fairy types like Flutter Mane are very good. So yeah, Mamoswine's a heavy Pokemon. You could go for Heavy Slam. I think Choice Scarf would be my instinct on what the best one is, but it's maybe closer to B. I'm going to put it in lower A though. I think the value of Ice Ground coverage is just always really good, being able to hit Rillaboom really hard, although you do have to worry about Grassy Glide for sure. You probably need some priority blocking of some effect, but I don't know. I might actually rank it lower. I think I'll actually put it in B tier because Grassy Glide is kind of a pain for it. Like, too much of a pain to justify, like, yes, you're kind of beating Landorus. I don't know. Mamoswine's kind of borderline. I'll have it in B tier for now, but I might switch it to low A at some point. Next is Mightyena, which I do not have to think twice about. It's a Intimidate Pokemon that is weak to and fighting types, and everything that it would probably want to check, it takes way too much damage from, and it doesn't have any good utility moves. So D tier for you, Mightyena. So Ludicolo, I think a lot of people have it higher up than me. I think it's pretty solid in some respects, but also kind of lacking in some others. Let me pull this guy up so you know what I'm talking about. So back in the day, you could run like Water Gem, Life Orb, or Water Gem or Life Orb Hydro Pump and do a lot of damage. You could also go the Waterium Z move and do a ton of damage in rain. Ludicolo doesn't have that anymore. It doesn't even have the Dynamax water moves anymore. It has to go for Hydro Pump if it wants to do large amounts of damage. And if you actually look at its special attack stat, you can kind of see that it was very much being carried by the rain boost as well as the basically boosted moves in Water Gem, while also having the utility to switch moves with the Water Gem, as well as the Waterium Z move, as well as the Dynamax move. So I think Ludicolo is actually kind of hurt by that a lot more than people are anticipating. I think its main value at this point is basically having Fake Out and Grass Stab into other water type Pokemon like Terra Water Pokemon. I think that's definitely valuable. It has good defensive typing, but it's actually might not even be the best water grass Pokemon in town with Ogerpon water form coming back. And on some level, like, it even has worse special attack and stabs than Basculegion female. Ghost type is way better in a format where Flutter Mane can be dominant. So yeah, I think it's largely outclassed by Basculegion female, which is outclassed by Basculegion male. So I'm not really high on Ludicolo. I think it does have a niche in being like the fake out rain Pokemon that's actually fast instead of just being like Toxicroak and bulky. So I think on something like a Rain Room team, a Rain Parish team, it definitely has some value there. A more defensive Rain team, if that has some power in this format, it could definitely rise up to good, but I am going to put it in B tier. I think even on a Rain team, a lot of the time you'll just want to be running Rillaboom and taking advantage of the defensive boon of Rain. So yeah, I'm going to put Ludicolo pretty low, the stats, and I don't think Power Creep has been too kind to it. So oftentimes in the shadow of Ludicolo is Shiftry. This time I think they're kind of on par in terms of Pokemon. So Shiftry this generation, if you did not know, got as a new ability Wind Rider. And if you were not aware what Wind Rider is, you don't know what Bramblegast is. So essentially this Pokemon, if Tailwind is up while this Pokemon is on the field, it gets a +1 attack boost. And this does stack. If you set up Tailwind multiple times in a battle, you get multiple boosts, but typically you don't have the bulk to do that anyways. The real kicker here is if you're hit by a wind move. So this is Icy Wind, Heat Wave, Bleak Wind Storm, all of these storm moves except for the Springtide Storm from Enamorus. You're basically getting a boost from all of those. And those are moves that are really common in the metagame a lot of the time. So being able to basically sit on those and just get boosted up is really nice. However, I think Shiftry does have some things lacking that Bramblegast did have, namely Strength Sap. I don't believe it has that move, and I think the ghost typing is generally very strong into, for example, Flutter Mane, being able to threaten that with Shadow Sneak or Terra Ghost, Terra Blast. I guess the one niche that Shiftry does have that I think makes it pretty usable is it gets access to Lash Out, Knock Off, I believe, as well as a really good stab move. And really it's able to use its secondary stab that isn't Grass without needing to have to go for the Terra. So you're able to get immediate damage as well as having Sucker Punch instead of Shadow Sneak is pretty good. I think Shiftry also has room for Explosion on some of its sets, so on the whole is worse than Bramblegast in most situations, but it's definitely usable. Between it and Ludicolo, I would still say Ludicolo is maybe a little bit better, just because Ludicolo isn't as outclassed as by other Rain Sweepers as Shiftry is by Bramblegast in my opinion. So yeah, I'm gonna go Shiftry is B tier. Definitely way better than it used to be, but I don't think in a format void of Bramblegast, I think it's pretty good. Probably even high B tier, maybe low A tier, but for Bramblegast tier, I don't think it really has too strong of a niche. So Probopass actually isn't that bad. It does get Iron Defense plus, let me show you the stats just to prove that it's not as bad as you remember it. So Probopass has a really incredible defensive spread. So 145, 150 plus 60 HP. The 60 HP is definitely a bummer, but being able to invest fully in your HP just means you're not having to choose a defense. They're both already incredible. And one thing I do want to point out is you have Wide Guard, which isn't what I was going for, but it's an option. There's better options. It does get Iron Defense and Body Press. So this does make it a decent Pokemon on its own. However, I think it's almost entirely outclassed by Garganacl. Garganacl just with Recover, Probopass doesn't have Recovery. You have to go for that Iron Defense set if you want to be doing anything with it. So I don't think it's very good. I don't see, wait, where'd it go? Yeah, and put it in D tier. In a format where there's no other Iron Defense Pokemon, it might be decent, but I'm going to be putting it pretty low. It's worse than Garganacl and worse than other Iron Defense Pokemon. Illumise is very bad, just straight up. It has no niche, in my opinion, over Grimmsnarl. Sableye does a lot of the cheeky prankster encore disable stuff better than it. Grafai Eye also has some niches over it. So I think it's very bad. And for Volbeat, I'm actually going to do it one better. I think you might be thinking, okay, Volbeat, I feel like it just gets exactly the same things and also similarly bad stats. But what you might be missing is, yes, horrible stats, very bad. But what it does have is, okay, Encore, whatever, Thunder Wave, whatever. Baton Pass, okay. So there's one, okay, it could pass something like Calm Mind, Nasty Plot, whatever. I'm sure a lot of Pokemon get that. a lot of Pokemon don't get is Tail Glow. So what you could do is lead a Follow Me Pokemon, like Follow Me, Rage Powder, go for Tail Glow, run a Focus Sash, live any spread attacks. They'd have to lead double spread to counter that. And then from there, you Tail Glow, you Follow Me, you Baton Pass into one of the amazing special attackers. You could go Flutter Mane, or just really beef up your Dazzling Gleams. You could beef up your Chi-Yu. So yeah, I think Volbeat's actually not that bad. In terms of the Cheesters, I'd actually put it at number 1 so far of these. Let's actually rearrange in terms of tiers. Superb Owl is pretty bad. I think probably at the bottom. Sandslash is kind of real. Yeah, anyways. Next is Whiscash. So D tier. I think this is not objectively like a horrible Pokemon. That's probably about the Mighty Enna tiers where they're just like 0 value in almost any format. But I think that Whiscash, in a lot of situations, it'd be like, maybe it could be your Fisher-bot Pokemon, but I think it's almost wholly outclassed by Dondozo in that respect and many others. So D tier for Whiscash. Groudon in a similar vein. It can hit really hard with knockoff. Crabhammer from adaptability. However, I feel like Samurott Hisuian does its job better with sharpness at this point, along with better bulk and utility. So Groudon, I'm going to be putting... Oh, Illumise, you got to go way lower, buddy. Yeah, sorry. I guess it doesn't really matter how low these guys are, but yes, Groudon, pretty bad, but maybe okay in like a really limited dex format if we get that, but I doubt it. Milotic, I think, is very good. For almost one reason, or really 2 reasons. So its stats are really solid bulk. So 95 HP, 79 is definitely not amazing, but it's pretty solid bulk. 125 special defense is really, really solid. The speed and special attack are fine. But the special attack is really good in the context of competitive as its ability. So whenever you get intimidated or icy winded or any stat drop, you're actually getting 2 stages of raise special attack. If you're familiar with an ability like Defiant, that will give you the +2 attack if you're like get a Bleak Wind Storm lower on the Defiant Pokemon or something like that. But Intimidate only boosts the attack effectively by 1 because the attack goes down 1 and then +2, so essentially just net +1. Competitive, you're always getting +2 special attack, so... There's a lot of cute setups you can go where you can lead a physical Pokemon. They don't lead their Landorus because they know, what if they lead Milotic? I'm just really behind the 8 ball. And then you switch in your Milotic on the faster Pokemon and catch them off guard in that situation. So I think competitive 1, very good ability. There's another Pokemon this generation that got competitive that kind of gives Milotic a run for its money. I'll get to that. But while we're here, I'll differentiate the Milotic. So that Pokemon also gets a Recover move, but Milotic gets Recover. You can go for Coil plus Hypnosis, which without Muddy Water, I think it lost access to Muddy Water isn't as good of a move because you don't really benefit from that accuracy boost unless you're going for like Hydro Pump, which I don't think is Milotic's strength. I think what its main strength is actually Scald. So, whoops. Scald is a TM, and you might be thinking, oh, everything used to get Scald. They re-released Scald, it must just be like, okay, Scald's not that valuable. Scald has actually not learned that many water-type Pokemon. Walking Wake, when it gets it, is going to be big. Sinistcha, for some reason, gets it. Colossal gets it, weird. Goodra gets it, cool. Wait, Inteleon gets it. That's really the first water type. None of the water types that get it are legal yet. Manaphy, okay. Alomomola, not using that. Milotic, okay, cool. Slowking, that's kind of real, but not really. Vaporeon, Gyarados, I'd rather be waterfalling. Slowbro, sure. So it's really the only viable Scald user that isn't Slowking or Vaporeon or Slowbro. And it's just way better as an ability with both of those. So yeah, I think Milotic is definitely A tier for me. Kind of low A tier, but if Intimidate plays a strong role in the metagame, I definitely think it's very strong. The problem is definitely the grass type weakness. If Rillaboom is going to be as good as we project it to be with the release of Grassy Glide, which is kind of like just the looming factor in a lot of people's heads is, okay, this Pokemon's good, how does it do into Grassy Glide? Milotic doesn't really do too well, unless it gets to like +2 and hits it with an Ice Beam, and then you still have to Terra to live a Wood Hammer. But yeah, I'm going to put it in A tier, just the ability is so strong. Next we have Dusclops, so Dusclops for me is A tier. In previous generations, I think its niche as a Trick Room user was a Haze Trick Room user primarily. You did have the Bulldoze, Shadow Sneak, Weakness Policy procs as well, but being able to haze away other Pokemon's Weakness Policy boost was enormous. I think that's less valuable now, but it still has a lot of really good tools. But I do want to point out it gets Taunt, it can Underspeed Amoonguss and Taunt it. It gets Will-O-Wisp, so that's a lot of really solid damage reduction in Trick Room so that you can guarantee you get a Trick Room up later in the game. Pain Split is solid damage as well as healing. And then Gravity, I want to point out. Gravity is a excellent tool for a lot of ground type Pokemon. If you're looking for a really solid support for Ursaluna, you're able to set up Gravity, and then Headlong Rush is able to at +2 pretty much knock out anything in the metagame that was kind of expecting to just like levitate or fly off of it. So I think that's a really good set. Gravity is definitely going to have some niche. It also enables some kind of cheesy hypnosis stuff from other Pokemon. I don't think it's going to offset Cresselia entirely, but I do think there will definitely be a consideration of a kind of bulky Trick Room Pokemon above Cresselia now, where it's not just a clear choice, okay, I'm not going to be running Hatterene or Armarouge, I have to run Cresselia. Now there's another bulky alternative that you can go to. There's actually a couple others, but I'll get into that later, because Dusknoir is not one of them. So Dusknoir is one of those Pokemon where it's like not awful, but any format that it's legal, Dusclops is. So Dusclops has, I believe, 130 defenses plus 40 HP stat. Dusknoir has 45 with like more attack stat, so it really only has the niche of being able to use Poltergeist, but in almost every situation you'd prefer the Eviolite over holding an item on Dusknoir, so I'm going to put it in the D tier. Chimecho is up next. Chimecho is just a really power crept, was never good Pokemon. You could go for Trick Room. I think it gets Trick Room and Pear Song, but a lot of Trick Room users actually do, so it's not that valuable, so pretty bad. Let's go below, just above Mightyena. I feel like Sandslash is actually better. Let's reorder these guys, yeah. So Sandslash is the new guard for, I guess if they just removed all the really good Pokemon, then these Pokemon could have niches, but these are all really bad, just objectively. Okay, Torterra is next. So Torterra's always been quite bad, and I still think it's pretty bad, but one thing to be aware of, it now gets Headlong Rush as a move. So with Wood Hammer and Headlong Rush, it has really good stab options, and more notably, the thing that makes it viable, or at least cheese viable, so you're able to cheese some people on ladder, is Shell Smash. This generation, it finally gets Shell Smash off of a 109 attack stat. It has really good defensive and low speed, so you're able to tank most hits that aren't like a ice type move, obviously, that it's 4 times super effective. You're able to tank those and then get your speed boost up. Its special attack isn't that good, but I guess you could run like Giga Drain or some other tech move to cover some of your coverage gaps. But yeah, I think Torterra is definitely something you're going to see some people trying on ladder to try and cheese you with. So if you see it, it's definitely just going for Shell Smash or like some sort of wide guard support. So Torterra, I'm going to be putting it pretty low cheese. Is it better than Belly Drum? Nah, I think it's maybe above Noctowl, but just barely. So cheese, which is better than the rest of the time, which has always been just D tier. Infernape is, I think, a very good not worth Pokemon. So it has good speed stats, right? 108 speed, 104 special attack, 104 attack, really good stats. Taunt, Fake Out, Helping Hand, Encore. I don't know if it gets Faint anymore, Burning Jealousy. So these are all decent moves, but nothing really outstanding. It kind of feels like power creep. What is this? Raging Fury, huh? The user rampages around spewing flames for 2 to 3 turns. Okay, so it's physical, fire, outrage. I guess they gave it a new move. Is this a signature move? When did this come out? Sorry. So Arcanine and Infernape. So not quite a signature move, but a little bit. So yeah, not a lot of good decent tools, but what I do want to point out, the Pokemon I've just pulled up is Salazzle, which has higher speed, higher special attack, which is probably what you're going to be going for, as well as, whoops, I believe this is a previous generation. Scarlet and Violet data, please. Better ability, Corrosion, so it can hit Steel or Poison types, or Oblivious, so it can't be taunted. So you can't just be taunted by other Pokemon trying to taunt or taunt your Encore. Yeah, so Encore, Disable, Fake Out. So Fake Out, Encore is just a really strong combination. Both of them share it, but being the faster of the two, I think is better. While losing out on a little bulk is something. Salazzle's not good, or unless you're Jamie Boyd already. So I doubt Infernape is going to have that much of a niche anyways. So yeah, Infernape is actually going to be the lowest, even though I think it actually has the highest Worlds finish outside of like 2009 Empoleon. Since 2009, I think Infernape has the best performance. I believe top 8 with Justin Karras. I think Bingji Wang got top 8 at a regional with Empoleon in 2019. Speaking of which, Empoleon, I think I'm going to put it in D tier. So if you didn't know, Empoleon did get a new option. So Torterra got Shell Smash, Infernape got, where are we? Come on, there we are. Infernape got Raging Fury. Empoleon got its hidden ability shifted from Defiant, which was boosting physical attacks essentially, to Competitive, which is a big deal. So in formats where Infernape and Landorus were like the two most common Pokemon, Empoleon did have a niche in that it was able to threaten with Liquidation, Waterfall, Aqua Jet, and just take advantage of those stat drops and just convert them into easy KOs on those Pokemon. Now we get that, except it's coming off of its base 111 special attack stat. Really solid special defense, natural bulk, decent defense, low speed, which is kind of annoying, but it's fine. You're just going to be moving second. I think the Steel type is really the main differentiator between it and Milotic, outside of one thing. Empoleon does not learn Scald. So you're reliant on like Water Pledge or Hydro Pump as your main stab water options. Surf, Hydro Cannon, I guess. So you're really relying on your coverage moves. Flash Cannon, Ice Beam, I think are going to be the main ones. You can go Roost, maybe kind of a mimic Milotic set with Icy Wind, Roost, Protect, Hydro Pump. But I think really the value of Milotic is its staying power. On a Pokemon like this in general, it's just going to be staying power and consistent damage, and Hydro Pump just isn't consistent. So I think a lot of people are high on Empoleon, but the Steel type could be the difference maker, like making it better. Being neutral to Grassy Glide and Rillaboom in general is definitely valuable. So for that reason, I think I'm going to put it at B, but I think Scald just makes Milotic like a tier better than Empoleon. Like Scald is such a good move, and the limited distribution makes it even more so. Kricketune. I'm not going to attempt to make the noise, but it is very famous. It's Cry if you haven't looked it up. So Kricketune, one of the rare Pokemon to get Parasong and Sticky Web. Outside of that though, God, is it the worst Pokemon on this list? No, I think I'll give that honor to Arbok and Ariados. They're pretty, nah, Rage Powder's something. Rage Powder Sticky Web's better than what Arbok, Furret's definitely the worst. Okay. I don't know why I'm so concerned about the D tiers ordering, but it's gonna bother me if it's not pretty close to right. Conkeldurr is next up. I think Conkeldurr is, it's in a weird spot because in any format, in most formats, it has some viability as a Guts Facade user, but Ursaluna outclasses it in that regard. Okay, so whatever. You could be a Wide Guard Guts fighting type. Okay, Hariyama does that, also gets Feint and Fake Out, so that's kind of an issue too. Okay, I'll just be a bulky, I don't know, Hammer Arm, Iron Fist Pokemon, good coverage, and just be like a stat stick that stays on the field. Iron Hand does that way better. And then if you want like a bulky fighting type, Urshifu, people have been saying, actually has almost exactly the same bulk as Conkeldurr with more speed and more offensive power. So Conkeldurr is a Pokemon kind of similar to Infernape, where it's probably better than Infernape, but it's like in a situation where this is an objectively very strong Pokemon, but it doesn't have a niche. All the fighting type Pokemon, it's like fighting types is such a competitive slot on a team right now that some people are running like Iron Hands and Urshifu in past formats, so I can't see Conkeldurr getting a lot of play. Now we have Leaveney. I think it like gets Chlorophyll, Sticky Web. It's not good. I'm gonna put it over here, pretty close to Mightyena tier, pretty bad. Swanna, similarly. Yeah, Swanna's bad. Swanna's a bad Pokemon. It's not better than Pelipper in any way. There's no point in using Swanna. Chandelure. So Chandelure used kind of Conkeldurr Flutter-esque in that if you want a fast ghost type, use Flutter Mane. If you want a fast, generally strong special attacking fire type, you can use Chi-Yu, and it's just always better almost. If you want an Imprison Pokemon, like Imprison Trick Room, I think Flutter Mane does that better for Rigorath. Yeah, it just feels like it's the little niches it has are kind of eclipsed by Flutter Mane and Chi-Yu, so I'm going to put it as not worth. I guess being Fake Out immune type of Chi-Yu thing, maybe Will-O-Wisp. I'll put it above Conkeldurr. I actually loved using Chandelure Conkeldurr in 2011, so it's kind of cool to see them together. Not so cool to see them so power crept out of existence. Next we'll move to Mienshao. So Mienshao I think is actually not great. It's not exceptional, but I think it's a little better than Cheese and barely usable. So the main value of Mienshao is that it's an inner focus fake out Pokemon. It also has Regenerator, which is a decent ability, but I think the immunity to faster fake out as well as being immune to Intimidate is definitely very good. Good speed, good attack stat, horrible bulk. You're going to pretty much always be using fake out, but this Pokemon's utility is incredible. So obviously it has fake out, it has feint to work on the mind game of, okay, I can protect in front of fake out, but if they go for feint, then I'm just wasting the turn. So that's a really good mind game. It has Helping Hand, which is just generally solid. Knockoff, which is good coverage. Taunt into Amoonguss, Trick Room. You can run a Sunny Day if you want to. I don't think that's probably one of its better options. But now we're getting to the good stuff. Quick Guard, and I believe also Wide Guard. So Quick Guard's interesting. I think usually wouldn't be very good, but I anticipate things like Extreme Speed, Grassy Glide. So being able to Quick Guard in front of Grassy Glide is just generally good utility. You're able to lead something that's weak to Rillaboom, but could one-hit KO it. If it couldn't go for a Grassy Glide onto it, it would need to Wood Hammer it and just beat it that way and just go Fake Out, Quick Guard, and then just neutralize the Rillaboom essentially. So I think the Quick Guard niche is really solid. Also, I didn't even mention it gets Ice Spinner, so really serving as a pretty solid Landorus counter. Yeah, I think Mienshao is like pretty good, honestly. Actually, yeah, I think it's like a lot better than I was giving credit for in the intro. The Quick Guard I think is like a very valuable niche, truthfully. So I don't think it's better than Shiftry. It's probably somewhere between Shiftry and Snorlax, I would say. So I'm gonna be putting it. Yeah, I think I'm gonna put B tier. I think it's just below Shiftry in terms of viability. I think it's definitely has. Like, it does its niche very well. Also, going back, Infernape, I believe, also had Quick Guard. You know, that could be something. Infernape did learn Quick Guard. I think I'll actually put Infernape closer to relatively high tier Cheese. I think Mienshao kind of does the Fake Out Quick Guard thing a bit better, but the Fire Stab is non-trivial. You also have Will-O-Wisp, so I think it actually might have some niches over Mienshao in like closed team sheet. So I'm gonna go with this guy over here. I think it's actually not that bad. Let's go Infernape. You made the comeback. Attaboy. So it looks like Torterra is the worst, unfortunately, which has kind of been the trend historically. Anyways, next up is Mandibuzz. So I think Mandibuzz is B tier. So Mandibuzz's main value is that it gets Overcoat, which is essentially an ability that lets it avoid powder moves. So this is things like Rage Powder, Sleep Powder, Spore, which is really relevant in any format where Amoonguss has any sort of presence. But one thing that's notable is there's a new Follow Me game in town, both Clefairy and Ogerpon, which we will get to. It's kind of the ogre in the room. So yeah, the main thing about Mandibuzz, it has incredible bulk stat, and it's usually augmented by a Grassy Seed or a Psychic Seed. I would expect Grassy Seed to maybe be a little more common, but I also think that Rocky Helmet has some viability, but the fairy weakness is really bad. There's not a lot of good Misty Terrain setters. It's like just Wheezing, which you have to not be running Neutralizing Gas, which is kind of a big opportunity cost. The Psychic Terrain is going to be Indeedee, which is kind of like a Trick Room Pokemon. You're not getting a ton of value out of that. So the main value here is like slower Tailwind with Roost and Foul Play. I guess like Taunt, you could go for something cute with like a toxic set. I don't want to sleep on it. It's like one of the bulkiest Tailwind setters, but at some point we have to reconcile that Prankster Tailwind might just be eternally better than slow Tailwind for the most part, with the dynamic speed changes. So you're not getting the most value out of your Tailwinds with Mandibuzz, and you're not really making much use of the turns you're on the field. I think Mandibuzz, it's like not really cheese, but I feel like it's pretty low usability. Like Clefairy is definitely better. Like would I use any of these Pokemon above Mandibuzz? Honestly, Volbeat I would, but that's just because I'm a nut and I like doing big damage with special spread moves. Yeah, Mandibuzz is interesting. I feel like it's bulky enough that some people might make it work, so I'm gonna put B tier. Next up is Carbink. So Carbink, I'm gonna be putting pretty square in top tier cheese. And why am I doing that? So if you did not know, Carbink has low HP but really high defenses, which is kind of typical of these sort of Pokemon. It has no stats outside of, you know, the defenses. It has Sturdy, which is like, okay, whatever, what's one hit KOing you anyways. But what's important about Carbink is Guard Split. So Guard Split is a move that averages your special defense and defense with your target. And what's pretty common with this is Guard Splitting a physically frail or especially defensively frail setup Pokemon. Most commonly set up Evasion, so like minimize Muck, minimize Chansey are some of the common examples of this. So yeah, now we have a pretty good Guard Split Pokemon. I know there was the Hot Pepper Pokemon with Moody that was like spreading through Power of Alchemy to Muck Moody, so you can do that and then Guard Split yourself in Trick Room and then Misty Explosion to get a free switch in into something. So Carbink's just really annoying. I think it gets Trick Room, sure, but essentially, yeah, it's a really solid cheese Pokemon at what it does. I think it does it better than anything in the metagame. I don't think Shuckle's here, so yeah, Carbink is just going to be your Guard Split Pokemon of choice. So bring Sacred Sword, bring Taunt, bring Roar, bring Parasong if you face this thing. Otherwise, it's going to be a little annoying to play. Trevenant. So there's actually a new Pokemon, Sinistra, I believe it's called, that largely outclasses this Pokemon as a Trick Room Pokemon with the Grass and Ghost type. It has Harvest Citrus Berry, which is like fine, I guess. But Trevenant has one thing. And it's the move Forest Curse, which basically gives you a Grass type to any Pokemon it targets. You can target yourself, I guess, if you want to become Spore Immune or something like that. So it adds a Grass type to your type. I don't think it erases types, it just adds Grass type, which is interesting. You can have 3 types at once with a move like this. But you could see this having some value if you have like a Chi-Yu or something. That could be cool. It's kind of a really small niche. The Forest Curse is not very good. It's like truly cheese tier move, so I'll put it at the bottom of C tier. D tier, Charjabug. So Charjabug has an ability called Battery that boosts up the power of ally special attack by 30%. I don't think it affects itself, actually. And it has actually pretty good passable defenses, but can't really do a lot. And 30% is like cool passively, but unless you're going for a very specific setup with like, you've already got Sunny Day for the Chi-Yu, it's boosted or like something silly, Charjabug's not really better than Chi-Yu almost any of the time. Battery is also less effective than just having a helping hand Pokemon on the field. And Charjabug's not doing anything on the field anyways. It doesn't have Electro Web this generation, so I think it's pretty bad. Not maybe better than Victory Bell, but worse than Big Explosion. Vikavolt is next. I think I saw some people talking about Vikavolt having some value. It has 145 special attack stat. You can go for Throat Spray, Bug Buzz. You could go for like Discharge combinations as a, you know, really strong special attacker next to like Ursaluna, along with Levitate. It does have that niche being a Levitate Discharger, but you could just go like a slower Zapdos to do that. Yeah, my take on Vikavolt is it has pretty decent bulk, but it doesn't have better bulk than Vikavolt, Belly Bolt. So if you're wanting to use a bulky Trick Room electric type with a spread move, you should just use Belly Bolt with Weakness Policy. Parabolic Charge. That move is just really, really so broken. If you have it next to Instruct or something like that. So I think Vigavolt is largely outclassed by Belly Bolt. So I'm gonna have it pretty low, but I do think it has some niche in the Levitate Discharge setup where you don't have to go for a weakness policy. So I think I'll put it above this guy, the Golem. It's not great, but not horrible. Ribombee is a Pokemon I'm pretty disappointed about, actually. So in previous generations, Ribombee was, I think, the fastest speed swap user other than Pheromosa. But last I checked on Cerebi, it did not have it. It didn't have speed swap. If it did, I'd probably put it in like pretty high C tier for cheese. But since it doesn't have it, the really value it has is like a fast Pollen Puff user, I guess. It's just really not very good. I'm going to put it in... Yeah, it has Shield Dust, which is kind of cool. You can't get Fake Outed. Like, you get the damage, but you don't take the flinch, so you don't have to run Covert Cloak. But, yeah, the value is just not really there. Like, I'd rather be running Macargo over... Like, no, not quite Macargo. I'd rather run a Dusknoir over it. Now we're kind of starting to get to the new Pokemon. Okay, almost. So we have Kommo-o. Kommo-o has like the worst dragon typing ever. The 4-type weakness, the 4 times weakness to Fairy has pretty much discarded it and Hydreigon from any viable play in a non-Terra format, but we do have Terra types this meta. I think Kommo-o to me is kind of like it's borderline B or C tier, so let me actually show it off. So when we look at Kommo-o, we start at the stats. So in terms of stats, decent, like it's like a very bulky Pokemon, right? Special defense and defense are good, low HP, but I guess that's fine. And the attack and special attack are pretty even, but largely pretty average. Here's the thing though. It gets a lot of good setup moves. It gets Belly Drum and it gets its signature move, Clangorous Soul and Clangorous Clanging Scales. So Clangorous Soul takes, I believe, 33% of your HP for an Omni boost, just one, which kind of feels like a pretty steep price to pay. Okay. In short, my take is Kommo-o was a strong Pokemon when the Z-move Clangorous Soul Blaze was legal because on the setup turn, you're doing a ton of damage, you were hitting through Protect. It was just an absurdly broken move. Even then, Kommo-o needed an extremely specific Perish or Shadow Tag, which was already a broken ability setup with Gengar to do well, along with like very off-meta Pokemon to make it work. And even then, it was barely good and only had like niche success. It had a big Worlds performance with Simone Sanvito used on a Perish team, but I really don't think without Clangorous Soul Blaze it has any juice at all. It could Belly Drum, I guess. I think it's pretty close to cheese tier. So it has 3 amazing abilities. Let's get that off. It has Bulletproof, which protects it from Ball and Bomb moves. So essentially you could go for a Steel-type Terra in front of Fluttermane and then Shadow Ball won't hit you. So you're basically walling it completely. Overcoat, really good into powder moves. So solid into Weather as well as just a Mungus Spore. And then Soundproof. This is the one that interests me. So it basically makes Parasong super free for you. You automatically beat that archetype, which with Politoed coming back, I don't think is something we can fully ignore, but more notably is being able to switch in on Hyper Voice from Sylveon, and more commonly is going to be Ursaluna Blood Moon. Whenever we get to that, has a really strong Hyper Voice option. So I think because of that, I'm going to be putting it pretty low. It has maybe some viability for the setup, but I think the primary value of Kommo-o is definitely going to be the Soundproof ability. So if that becomes a valuable niche, I think it is usable. I don't think it's very good outside of that. In terms of viability, I would say like I'm gonna guess like probably worse than Mandibuzz. Just barely. Like I could see someone, you know what, maybe I'm underestimating Clangorous Soul. I'm gonna put it above Mandibuzz, but not above Clefairy. Next is Morpeko, which has cool tools. It has Fake Out, Parting Shot, Quash. Unfortunately, so does Dark type Persian, which is that legal? Maybe it's not, but it only has 97 speed stat. You can parting shot fake out with Grimmsnarl. I don't think Quash is that good on such a slow Pokemon. Usually in slower, bulkier formats, the Quash is good, but like Tailwind's going to be really strong in this format, I would have guessed. So more Pico. You are not very worth, but not that bad overall. The ability is really bad though. Yeah, maybe a little better than Victory Bell. Cramorant, the ability is so trash. The gulping move, you have to be using Surf or dive to get any value out of it. The stats are kind of bad. Yeah, Cramorant, yeah, those stats are atrocious. So we will put you... Oh, it's going down. It is going down. Yeah. Oh. I would say Swanna. Yeah. It's about Swanna tier. Okay, now we get into the fun stuff. So, Diplin, new Pokemon. Let's check it out. So, the interesting thing about Diplin is 80, 110, 80 defenses. Those are pretty good. What you have to recognize is that Diplin is getting an evolution in the code for the next DLC, so it can use Eviolite to boost these defenses by 1.5. So this is like Porygon 2 level of bulk, I think maybe even bulkier. It's comparable bulk to Dusclops, like maybe not more, but pretty close. It also gets Recover, which is pretty cool. Doesn't have to rely on Synthesis and Rain. That's very nice. And its ability, Super Sweet Syrup, lets you basically set up Sweet Scent when you enter the field, so you lower the evasiveness of opposing Pokemon, which is nice. Unfortunately, this is only a one-time activation ability, so you can't switch it out and switch it back in and just continually lower evasion, which I think maybe could be cool for just enabling 100% accurate hypnosis or something weird like that. But as it stands, the issue is it doesn't have... It has really absurd bulk, right? But it doesn't get Toxic. I don't think it gets Leech Seed, which is a kind of a big issue. It gets Infestation, which is probably its only value. Offensively, it has a special move that is like 60 base power but in lower speed. Passively, over the course of 3 turns, I don't think that's very good. So the main issue is, yes, you can lower the special attack of your opponents once, but they can just switch out. So unless you're planning on just using Hypnosis with Gothitelle and exerting no offensive pressure on the first turn, which is possible, I guess. Yeah, I don't think it's very good. One idea, I was like trying to figure out what you could do with this Pokemon. I think maybe pairing it next to Landorus Incarnate and finally being able to go for Sandshear Storm at 100 base power or 100 accuracy with Life Orb, Sheer Force could be kind of cool. I think they actually didn't even give this Pokemon Helping Hand, did they? Yeah, just such bad TM access. Like, I don't think it's very good at all, so I'm gonna put it in C tier. I'm sure someone's gonna come up with some goofy set to work off of Sweet Scent, but like I think it's probably around middle of C tier. It's not very good, but it's not, you know, I could see something cooking with it. Okay, so now we're getting into the actually good Pokemon, I would say, for the most part. So Sinistcha is the first one I will go with. So I know Wolf put up a tweet where he said that this thing is actually broken. I'm kind of inclined to agree, and I'll go over why. So I don't think this Pokemon like jumps out at you as immediately being that crazy, but we'll get into it. So the HP stat is kind of bad. 71 isn't that much bulk. Defense is really good, 106. Special defense kind of bad, and special attack is pretty solid, 121. That's not that, you know, nothing jumps out yet. It's a grass ghost type, which there's been a ton of those, but they've never been especially good. Hospitality is a cool ability. On switch in, you're healing your partner by 25%, but not yourself, which kind of stinks a bit. Heat Proof, also a solid defensive ability, removes your fire type weakness, but if we scroll down, this is where things get actually effective. So Matcha Gotcha is its new move. It does 80 base power, 90 accuracy, which isn't that great. The user's HP is restored by up to half the damage taken by the target. Okay, whatever, stronger Giga Drain, not that big a deal. This may also leave the target with a burn. That's a 20% burn chance, which is really, really cool. Weirdly enough, it also gets Scald, it gets Hex, so you could imagine just a burn Hex set being solid, but that's not where it ends. Just a quick note, At the time of recording this, Showdown has Machagacha as a spread attack, so if that's the case, and it's essentially just better parabolic charge where you're healing from both targets as well as potentially burning both of them, that's just like objectively one of the most powerful moves ever created in my opinion. And with the prevalence of most likely Follow Me from Ogerpon, having an option to hit things like Water Urshifu with a spread attack with a grass type is just really, really valuable in my opinion. That alone makes this Pokemon very good if it's spread attack. If it's single a target, it's still a very good move, so yeah. But here we go. Life Dew, decent move, decent healing. You could just have this as a heal bot. Cool. Rage Powder. Okay. Move, no Pokemon is going to, turn its nose at having Rage Powder. Next up is Strength Sap. So we saw last weekend James Beck making really good use of Strength Sap with the Bramblegast. Now we have the same typing, but an actually bulky Pokemon that can make use of that. So I think Strength Sap is just such a good move on a Pokemon like this. Not only do you have the healing of Machagacha, you're pretty much always going to be healing back up with Strength Sap, while also providing a buff to your teammates by reducing attack stats. I think that's like Rage Powder, Strength Sap, Machagacha, really good tools. You could run Hex, you could run Protect, these are all cool. If you wanted to, you could run Leaf Storm, a Jetpack into Hospitality. I probably wouldn't recommend it, but that is an option. And then now, going even further, it gets Trick Room. Like, it has 70 base speed, perfect Trick Room speed. I mean, not perfect, but it's functional in and out of Trick Room if you want it to. Going for Trick Room means you get to go for Machagacha or Scald first, meaning you get a chance to burn opponents. You get to Strength Sap first. Strength Sap opponents after you've taken a ton of damage, going for Trick Room, heal back up to full. You're looking at a Pokemon that is able to consistently heal your own Pokemon, burn opponents, heal itself from that damage, do meaningful damage against the metagame, namely Urshifu and other water types, burn physical attackers. Like, this Pokemon is just such good utility, and I was very surprised to see people not hyping it up on release because, like, frankly, if Machagacha is a spread type move, it might be S tier. Yeah, this Pokemon, in my opinion, is absurd. Yeah, it's really dependent. Like, I think it's easily... I don't think it's necessarily great. I think it has too much... Okay. Here's my contention. If Machagacha is a spread type attack, then Sinistcha is like probably a little worse than Milotic, but still super, super strong Pokemon. S tier. If it's single type, single target, I think probably takes it down to, I would say better than like top of A tier. I think it's better than the Weather Setters on its own. No, I think it's actually very dependent on the... Like, it's a good Pokemon for sure if the attack is a single target. But I think Strength Sap, Trick Room, Rage Powder on its own are just very excellent tools and would put it as a top tier Trick Room Pokemon, even better than Dusclops in my opinion. Just single target. And double target is like probably below Milotic, but still top tier. So for safety, I will put it here. So, talk your ear off about that Pokemon. Now let's go to the legendaries. So, Okidogi. C tier, I think. We'll check it out. So, Okidogi. Toxic Chain, basically 30% chance to badly poison any Pokemon that you touch, which is kind of cool, but its other ability, Guard Dog, is essentially making you immune to Intimidate, or boost the attacks stat if you're intimidated, which I think is just one boost. I think it's essentially going to be Defiant. Well, not Defiant, but if you get intimidated, you're going +1, but not if you get Icy Winded, which is, you know, you would like if you get Moonblast special attack drop to get a boost, but not the case. You also can't be forced to switch, which you're not really going for like setup on this Pokemon, so I don't really get. Anyways, the stats on this Pokemon are good. High HP stat, high defense, decent special defense, and high attack stat. The speed is middling but decent and not wasting a lot of base points in the special attack. The problem with Okidogi is the move pool. It's not a bad move pool. It's got like good coverage moves all around. Like it's a really good coverage bot. But the issue is like, is poison really the secondary type that we want on our fighting type in this metagame? Like being able to resist the become neutral to fairy type is fine. You're still not hitting Flutter Mane super effectively with poison moves though, because poison is not super effective into ghost, so they have to Terra for you to actually want to KO it. But yeah, it has good natural bulk and attack, bad typing, I would say. Poison's not a good type defensively generally, but I think its main niche is its ability to take on Iron Hands. I don't think Heavy Slam does a lot, Wild Charge shouldn't do that much, so maybe you can beat it 1v1 if you're like Toxic Chain, but you would really just be running Guard Dog in my opinion, so maybe you're okay into Iron Hands, you're really good into Rillaboom, unless they Stomping Tantrum you, which won't do that much, but you know, it's something to consider, and it's your fighting type that's decent into Flutter Mane. I would say for the most part, this Pokemon is like C tier, not because it's a bad Pokemon, but because it just doesn't have a lot of niche. I think it's like maybe low tier usable. Should you use it? Probably not, but you could use it, I guess. I think the Grass Resist against Rillaboom, that's like that's non-zero. I'm gonna give it usable, but just barely. Next is Monkey Dory. Let's look at our boy Monkey. So good speed stat, 106. Basically decent special bulk, but bad defensive bulk and high special attack. So it's kind of a low speed. We'd really like it to be higher. Let's look at the hidden ability. Frisk is completely useless in an open team sheet environment, but in ladder, I guess it could be cool. Could have some value there. Toxic Chain's pretty cool ability if it got like Expanding Force or something like that, but it doesn't. What it does get is Fake Out. So I think Fake Out Toxic Chain is actually pretty cool. Like 30% to give poison to like a bulky Pokemon like Iron Hands can be kind of cool. And I do think Sludge Wave, having a really strong Sludge Wave Pokemon is pretty cool. You're not guaranteeing a poison if you hit a Pokemon, or like hit both Pokemon, but the odds are very high that you'll at least get one status off. It also gets Parting Shot with decent speed stat. I don't think that's that bad, but I think the main value is truthfully just going to be like Fling, Weakness Policy, Sludge Wave setups. Like I don't really see it being that useful outside of that. The stats are decent, like Sludge Wave stored power setups essentially. Yeah, I think that's going to be the main value of this Pokemon, and you probably slot in maybe a Terra Blast or something like that to hit the like ground types that are resisting Psychic and Poison. But other than that, I'm not really sold on Monkey Dory. I'm pretty sure it's like kind of firmly cheese tier. Like as soon as you learn it as Parting Shot, you don't fall for that. Better than Infernape? I wouldn't say so. Better than Carbink? I'm gonna put it like maybe a bit better than Sandslash, I'd say. Next is Fezandipity. Yeah. So Technician is its ability. Toxic Chain is what you're gonna be going with in most of the time though. It has solid speed and special bulk, decent physical bulk, and like high attack and no special attack. The issue is like you could go for dual wing beat Technician, which is like a set, but I think for the most part, you're actually going to be trying to abuse your ability. It has really good special coverage moves, but like physical, like you're not really hitting hard enough to justify that. So I think for the most part, you're just going to go for special spread moves like Icy Wind, Dazzling Gleam, Heat Wave, and then tacking that on with Venoshock, maybe Tailwind, Roost. I think these are decent sets. If you're entirely centering a team around Poison, which does kind of sound ladder cheesy, you could, like I know Moxie Boosted had a set like that. I think, is this better than a Tail Glow Volbeat? I would say no. I would say it's like pretty similar to Carbink in terms of tiering, but I feel like Carbink, like at this point, why are we not just using Glamora, truthfully? Yeah, I think it's probably a little worse than Carbink. Glamora just being a better poison type setter with Mortal Spin and Toxic Spike is a bit of an issue, but all that to say, yeah, not too good. Anyways, so we'll go Ursaluna Blood Moon before we go into Ogerpon, just because that's gonna be some doing. So Ursaluna, if you did not know, Really overpowered Pokemon in Regulation D, was able to top 4 worlds, I believe, and just a ton of scattered really solid showings. Ursaluna Blood Moon is its new form, and if you thought that they couldn't make Ursaluna better, in my opinion, you're probably right, but they did make it different and very cool in its own right. So you see Ursaluna, the original, is just a really bulky, strong physical attacker. Ursaluna Blood Moon is the opposite, so it has still impressive physical bulk, but at this point getting kind of low in the special bulk, not taking hits that well, but really high special attack and low attack stat with 52 speed, so notably doesn't underspeed other Ursaluna in Trick Room. I guess there's the matter of soft resetting for the both of them, but Blood Moon you have to like just reset and try and get your low speed IV. Anyways, moving to the ability. So Ursaluna Blood Moon's ability is Mind's Eye, which ignores evasiveness, accuracy can't be lowered, which is like, okay, that's not super common. But the big thing is it can hit ghost types with normal and fighting moves. That's a big deal because the main attack that Ursaluna Blood Moon is going to be going for is actually Hyper Voice. Can't find it here, but yeah, Hyper Voice is going to be its main stab move of choice. It also gets good coverage move in Earth Power, Moonblast. This is covering the Steel types that are still able to switch in because now the Ghost types are covered with your ability. And Blood Moon is really the kicker on this Pokemon. Moonblast good against fighting types that would otherwise threaten you. So yeah, I do like the Moonblast coverage. It just has like the perfect coverage moves and the perfect ability for its toolkit. And the last move is Blood Moon, which kind of blows everything out of the waters. Ursaluna Blood Moon form doesn't have this weakness, so it's a 140 base power special attack that can't be used twice in a row, similar to Gigaton. However, the special attack stat on Ursaluna is 135. I think that's like double Tinkaton's attack stat. Can't be intimidated. Hits ghost types, only resisted by steel types, rock types. I think that's it. And you can hit that with stab Earth Power on switch in. This is going to, I don't think Ursaluna Blood Moon is broken by any means, but it's going to make Trick Room teams a lot more nuanced to handle. You can't just switch in the ghost type, reverse Trick Room on this guy. Yeah, I think it's a very strong Pokemon. The Blood Moon kind of sets it over the top. You can go Assault Vest, which I think a lot of people are going to go. We could see Silk Scarf, Life Orb. Choice specs would kind of be over the top, I think. You like the utility of being able to switch on Earth Power just because Hyper Voice isn't that strong. You generally, the strength of this set is the utility of the coverage and just being able to switch on and off between Blood Moon. So going back here, I think this is easily like the best non-legendary Pokemon introduced. In my opinion, it's not better than Auroraville Ninetales, but that could kind of be... I think it actually is. I think we're going to see a fair amount of manual weather and non-manual weather pop up, so Ninetales won't be able to get uncontested Auroravales, in which case it's not as good. But lastly, we're going to go into the Ogerpon forms. Let's start with the mechanics overview. So it's a Pokemon with 4 different forms: a grass type form, a water type form, fire type form, and rock type form, and this is changed with a held item. So the grass type form just has grass type, and the other all have grass type and then the additional typing. And these Pokemon have to be holding their mask item, the mask key item, to essentially change the form, and they can't hold another item. The Teal Mask form, you could hold Teal Mask, it'd kind of be a waste outside of maybe not being able to be knocked off, but yeah, generally the value of this form is the single grass type and the ability to hold an item like Life Orb, Rocky Helmet, Focus Sash, Citrus Berry. The world is your oyster. We don't really know what's going to be best yet. I'll throw out some options while I'm talking about this Pokemon just because it has so many, but yeah. Main value, you can run an item on the grass form. The others, you cannot run an item essentially. Each of the Pokemon can only Terra into their main type. So the fire one, for example, can only Terra into fire types, the water into water, the rock into rock, and the grass into grass. So that's kind of annoying defensively. You kind of know what Ogerpon's defensive options are almost entirely coming into a battle, which is limiting, but I think is rather balanced as we're going to see in the future. So going into abilities, the grass type has, I would say, the best ability in Defiant. The water one has Water Absorb, good into Urshifu. Heart Flame Mask has Mold Breaker, which it does get Taunt. So you can taunt Goldengo or something like that, which is something I think previously only Tinkaton could hit. hit Goldango with status moves consistently for the most part. You're also able to hit Heatran with fire moves. That's kind of cool. Into the grass Terra Heatrans, you're actually able to counter that. And then Cornerstone is sturdy, so 100% able to survive attacks that are not multi-hit. Now what's cool about Ogerpon is whenever you Terrastalize it, you get a new ability called Embody Aspect. And for each of the forms, you either get a speed boost for grass, special defense for water, attack for fire, or defense for rock. Largely, I think the main value out of this is going to be the Teal Mask and the Heart Flame Mask. The speed boost is really nice, and the attack boost is also really something you can play around and plan a whole team around on. Now we'll move into the stats, which are basically seem like they're created by like the Smogon create a Pokemon tier, just because they're so well balanced and good. HP is 80. Yeah, basically the bulk is kind of solid, reasonably solid natural bulk around the board. Special attack isn't wasting much, 60, and attack is 120 with speed being 110. So this is really naturally speedy. You're not going to be outspeeding, for example, the Genies by 1 point. Tornadus and Thundurus will outspeed you, and this is relevant against Tornadus because if they want to go for Bleak Wind Storm, they are able to do that if they run max speed, but a lot of them aren't doing that. They lose a lot on bulk to do that. So okay, cool abilities, cool typings, interesting mechanic. Let's move to the thing that really throws it over for me, is the move pool. Ivy Cudgel is a 100 base power attack. Essentially, it's kind of like Terra Blast, where whatever form you are, that's the typing of the move. So Teal Mask is grass, fire is going to be the fire one, etc. And it has a high crit chance, 100 base power, 100 accuracy. So essentially, just on the basic level, you have a 1/8 chance to crit this move, which is just augmenting its damage output a fair bit. You also have Spiky Shield on this set, so just better protect. And lastly, and most importantly, Follow Me. Ogerpon's ability to use Follow Me is huge because although Rage Powder is really strong priority redirection, it is not able to redirect grass types, and we've seen a lot of people abuse this. Like grass type Iron Hands, Rillaboom are common counters to Rage Powder. We've seen Surging, the Safety Goggles Urshifu just to ignore Rage Powder. So having a Follow Me Pokemon that is actually good in this format is huge on its own. It kind of gives us some answers against Grassy Glide, Rillaboom, Urshifu, etc. before we're even playing in the format. That alone is just like so good. So you already have kind of 3 of your move slots picked out if you want them. You could, switch one in and out if you wanted, but anyways. So Spiky Shield, Ivy Cudgel, Follow Me, very good. So Focus Energy is an interesting move on the set because critical hit boosts work in a very odd way. +1 is 1/8 chance, +2 is 1/2 chance, and +3 is 100% chance. Focus Energy gives a +2 chance, so combine that with Ivy Cudgel, and you're getting a 100% crit chance. I think for the most part, this is going to be a very solid set on the fire type aspect, because if you cascade the +1 boost of the Terraform as well as the crit chance on the Ivy Cudgel plus Focus Energy, if you set that up, you're consistently hitting for basically over 2 times the damage that you'd normally be doing, as well as ignoring Intimidate if you get intimidated. I guess it's down to 1.5 at that point, but regardless, it's just really consistent damage output. A lot of the times people are going to be pairing it with Sun, so yeah, I think the damage output provided by Focus Energy is really solid on a lot of the sets, and we could also see it run, I believe it gets Swords Dance, so my thinking is that it's going to be kind of situational what you want to go for. I think on the Defiant one, Swords Dance is just better because you can't get intimidated, which is one of the values of Focus Energy, is not just essentially acting as a +1 boost, but acting as a +1 boost in the face of any Intimidate. If you can't get intimidated anyways, you would rather just raise your stats because you'll always be +2 and doing double damage instead of just sometimes be doing a +2, right? Basically a 50% more damage. I think I'm starting to get a little bit too much in the weeds. If you want, I'll do a bit of a moveset breakdown, but I think essentially highlights are Focus Energy, Swords Dance, Follow Me, Spiky Shield, Power Whip for the other forms, Ivy Cudgel, damage output is just really strong, and yeah, I think Follow Me just sets this Pokemon over the top. Going into the individual ones, I think the Grass one, the ability to run an item, to me, seems like it's going to be the best one, followed closely by the Fire type one. Just a note, all of these Pokemon have really good neutral resistances and neutral types with not a lot of weaknesses, so they all have really good typings. I think the rock one's kind of the weakest. I would put it kind of below Ninetales in terms of tiering. You basically do have 100% accurate Stone Edge though, so I don't want to ignore that. It's really strong in that regard. Kind of decent into Tailwind teams. You can just lead that and take a knockout quickly. So I do think that's very good. The water type one, I think, is probably the worst one in my opinion. It's like the most neutral one. It's like you don't get a lot out of the water coverage for the most part. This is the most defensive one. I would actually say, yeah, I think this one's niche against Tailwind teams is pretty solid. You can also actually hit and one-hit knock out Ninetales before it attacks, which is cool. But yeah, I think Fire one might be better. Like Fire one I think is the most obvious one for an offensive team. You can run Tornadus plus Sunny Day and just like go for the Ivy Cudgel plus a Terra and just knock out Iron Hand straight up, which is kind of insane. Pair it with Chien-Pao, similar, but I think the speed boost people are kind of overlooking on this Pokemon. They're like, people are looking at Chien-Pao as the counter to this one, but if you just chip the Chien-Pao even a little bit, you knock it out with Ivy Cudgel, and you can, after going for the Terra, which you get a speed boost for. So yeah, I think people are sleeping on this one. The ability to run item is crazy. If you want to get real crazy, you can run Double Kick and knock out Chien-Pao that way if they haven't Terra'd. And yeah, I think the ability to run an item is just insane here. You can run Play Rough, you can run Rock Tomb. I think Rock Tomb seems like a pretty cool one where you can hit the, like if Landorus Terra's into a flying type and you have some chip on that, you're knocking it out. So yeah, I think this is a really cool Pokemon, and I think it's easily the strongest thing to come out of the DLC outside of Blood Moon, Ursaluna, and Ninetales. So that will do it for my ranking of the new Pokemon released in the Pokemon Scarlet Violet DLC. Hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments if you have any disagreements, which Pokemon you think I might be underrating, which I'm overrating, and yeah, I'll pin in the comments below if Sinistcha has a double target Machagacha or a single target. I think I did. I don't remember. But yeah, if it's single target, I have it here. If it's double target, I would say probably either above the rock type or between it and the grass type. But yeah, that's gonna be a big game changer in my opinion. But yeah, comment. Hope you guys enjoyed, and peace, y'all.